I always put care into Sunday dinners. It had become routine. Baked salmon with rosemary and lemon, the kind I thought my grandkids liked. Noah, 12, usually went back for seconds, and 8-year-old Darla cleaned her plate, which was rare for her. They never said they loved it, but their plates spoke for them. Dinners used to be full of chatter and laughter. Now they felt more like something my son Brian showed up for out of duty, not desire. I set the table with the old china Hugh and I got for our wedding. Faded blue flowers, but still our special set. Today felt important. I planned to talk about the Disneyland trip the kids mentioned last Sunday. I wore the new lavender blouse I'd bought just for this meal, the first new thing in my closet in years. It was my first real vacation since retiring 5 years ago, and I wanted to feel put together. Right on time at 5:30 the doorbell rang. Brian had always been punctual, just like his dad. "Hi, Mom," he said, giving me a quick kiss. The scent of cologne and cigarettes, though he swore he'd quit, lingered on him. His wife, Dana, walked in behind him, looking polished as always in a stiff navy pantsuit. She handed me a bottle of cheap wine. "It's for dinner," she said with that tight smile of hers. "Grandma," Darla shouted, running straight to the TV without even looking at me. Noah didn't lift his head from his phone, just nodded. His shaggy dark hair kept falling into his eyes like Hugh's used to, and he flicked it away every few seconds. "Come on in, everything's ready," I said with forced cheer. "How was your week?" Brian just said, "The usual," and took his spot at the table. "Noah, Darla, dinner," he added. They slowly drifted over like it was a chore. I remembered when Brian was their age, setting the table with me, telling me all about his school adventures. Now my grandkids looked at the food like I'd served them poison. "I made your favorite, Noah," I said gently, giving him a bigger helping. "I don't like salmon," he muttered, pushing the plate away. "Never have." I froze. Had I been wrong all these years? I looked at Brian for clarity, but he only shrugged. "Eat what you're given," Dana said, her voice clipped. "Grandma tried." Noah rolled his eyes but started picking at the food. Darla did too. I tried again. "Brian, didn't you say something about a big project?" He was working on a shopping center in Springfield, something I used to feel proud about. But lately he shared less and less. "It's fine," he said, not looking up. "Nothing new." "And you, Dana? How's work?" "Nothing you'd be interested in, Martha," she replied flatly. Her words hit hard, like I'd asked something inappropriate. Back when Hugh was alive, our house was loud and full of life. Since he passed, it had grown quiet. I wasn't sure when simply caring turned into being a nuisance. I asked about the kids. "Noah, didn't you have swim meets coming up?" "They were 2 weeks ago," he said. I blinked. Had he told me? I kept a calendar just to remember this stuff. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't." "Never mind," he cut in. "I only got third." "That's still amazing," I said quickly. Dana jumped in. At his age, Brian always took first. "Right, honey?" Brian didn't answer. I remembered how much Hugh had pushed him to swim. He hated it. But now wasn't the time to bring that up. "Third place is still something to be proud of," I said, giving Noah a small smile. He didn't respond. The room went quiet again, just the soft clatter of silverware. I finally brought up what I'd been waiting for. "I heard you're planning a trip to Disneyland?" I tried to keep my voice light. Jason and Dana exchanged looks. Something about it made my stomach tighten. "Yeah, in 2 weeks," Brian said. "We're going for 7 days." "That sounds wonderful. I've always wanted to go. Hugh and I kept putting it off. Figured we'd go when Brian was older, but then..." "Mom," Brian said, his eyes finally meeting mine, filled with something like pity. "We're going with Dana's family. Her parents, her sister's family, a cousin. A whole group." "That's great," I said, still not understanding. "A real family outing." Dana's voice cut in like a cold wind. "We've already booked a van. It's full. 13 people." I stared at her. "What do you mean?" Brian sighed. "There's no space for you, Mom." I felt the bottom drop out of me. They hadn't planned to include me, not at all. "I see," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I understand." Dana kept slicing her food. "It'd be hard on you anyway. All that walking with your arthritis." My arthritis. A passing comment I made last month had somehow become the reason I was too much trouble. "I could sit and rest when I need to," I said softly. "Mom," Brian said gently, "be realistic. You wouldn't enjoy it." And the kids would feel like they had to look after you. I glanced at Noah, still focused on his plate. Darla looked at me briefly. Something flickered in her face, maybe guilt, but then she looked away. Of course, I said. My own voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. You all deserve to enjoy yourselves. Dana let out a relieved breath. Glad you understand. Some people would have taken it the wrong way. Yeah, Brian added. Mom's always been reasonable. I felt something twist deep inside. For 5 years since Hugh passed, I'd tried so hard to be accommodating. Never complaining when they canceled, always saying yes to last-minute babysitting, never asking for anything. I thought being easygoing would keep me close to them. But all it did was make it easier to cut me out, like I was an extra line on the vacation budget. What about dessert? I asked, trying to shift the mood. I made apple pie. Dana answered right away, we're on a diet. But the kids can have some. I got up to clear the plates and Brian glanced at his watch. We'll have to head out after dessert, Mom. Still got a lot to do today. I nodded, hiding the sting. I remembered when they used to stay late playing board games and watching movies. Now dinner felt like a chore they had to check off. In the kitchen, slicing the pie, my mind wandered to the past. Brian climbing into my lap for bedtime stories. Teaching him to ride his bike in the park. How he cried on my shoulder after his first heartbreak. When did I stop being his mom and become an inconvenience? When I came back with the pie, Dana was whispering to Brian, but she stopped talking the second she saw me. The kids took their slices, barely touching them. Noah didn't even try his. Don't like it? I asked. I can bake something else next time. It's fine, he mumbled. Just not hungry. Dana added, he's on a sports diet. You probably didn't realize. I said nothing. But I remembered being the one who helped Brian train, watched what he ate, cheered at every meet. Now I was just out of touch. After 10 quiet minutes, Brian stood. We should get going. Thanks for dinner, Mom. Dana echoed him. Thank you, Martha. Kids say goodbye. Bye, Grandma, Darla muttered. Noah just nodded, already on his phone. See you next Sunday? I asked as I walked them to the door. Brian shrugged. I'd have to skip. A lot to prep before the trip. Of course, I said, trying not to sound hurt. Call me when you're free. When the door shut, silence settled hard over the house. I started gathering the dishes. They hadn't even offered to help. Brian used to help me clean up. We used to laugh while doing it. Now I stood alone, rinsing plates in the quiet, their words echoing in my mind. No room for you. You'd slow us down. You wouldn't be comfortable. They spoke like they cared. But the truth was simpler. They didn't want me there. As I wiped down the table, I noticed a paper on the floor, probably slipped from Dana's bag. I bent down to pick it up, ready to set it aside. But the bold headline caught my eye. Booking confirmation, family tour to Disneyland. I didn't want to snoop, but I read it anyway. There were 14 names listed. Brian, Dana, Noah, Darla. And one that stopped me, Vanity Lamb. Dana's cousin. I'd only met her once at their wedding. They weren't even close. Then I saw it. A 15-passenger van. 15 seats. For 14 people. My hands shook as I read it again and again. They had lied. There was room for me. They just chose Dana's cousin over me, their own mother. Their grandmother. I sat down slowly, the paper still in my hand, and something inside me cracked. All these years I told myself they were just busy. That it was normal for kids to pull away. I made excuses. I told myself I was lucky for what time I got. But now, holding that piece of paper, I saw the truth. I wasn't welcome. I was a burden they didn't want to carry. Not if it meant giving up a seat or explaining to anyone why I was still there. I folded the paper carefully and laid it on the table. Something inside me shifted. Pain, yes, but also something else. A kind of freedom. No more pretending things were fine. No more playing the role of the patient, available grandmother. The one they picked up and put down like a jacket. I didn't know what I'd do next, but I knew one thing for sure. This couldn't go on. I didn't sleep that night. I lay staring at the ceiling, thoughts tumbling over each other. We didn't have enough room. You'd slow everyone down. Their words played in my mind like broken glass. But it wasn't their cruelty that hurt the most. It was my own silence. I knew they were lying. And I let them. Morning came, gray and damp. Rain tapped gently at the window. I rose, sore and hollow. I had turned 67 just last month. But that morning I felt 90. I brewed a strong cup of tea, sat at the kitchen table and unfolded the paper again. 15-passenger van. Comfortable. Air-conditioned. And just one name too many. That name wasn't mine. It was Cousin Vanity. I wasn't even considered. Me, a mother, a grandmother, a woman who had given her whole life to this family. My mind drifted to Hugh. He had died so suddenly, out in the garden, a heart attack. Gone in an instant. Brian had been there for me at first. He helped with the funeral, sorted out the paperwork, checked in. But slowly things started to slip. The calls got fewer. The visits got shorter. Dana had endless reasons why they couldn't come by. Noah has a meet. Darla's in rehearsal. We're visiting my parents. I understood. They were busy. Kids, jobs, life. So I tried to be helpful. When Dana first called asking if I could babysit so they could go to a meeting, I said yes in a heartbeat. I thought it'd bring us closer. I thought I'd get to really know my grandchildren. But that's not what happened. What started as the occasional favor turned into routine. Mom, can you pick up Noah? Martha, we've got to leave town. Can you stay with the kids? I always said yes. How could I not? They were my family, my grandkids. I just wanted to be part of their lives. But slowly I realized I'd become their free babysitter, called when it was convenient, dismissed just as easily. Sometimes it was for an hour, sometimes a weekend. I never complained. Then came the money request. At first, just small things. Mom, can you lend us a little until payday? But the amounts grew. We need help with Noah's summer camp. I kept giving, dipping into my own savings, cutting back quietly. No one ever asked how I was doing living on a fixed income. And now this trip, they hadn't even invited me. I only found out because Darla slipped up. My tea had gone cold. I sat in silence while the old clock ticked. Hugh's father gave it to us. Now it kept time in a house full of memories and loneliness. I glanced around. This was where Brian took his first steps. Where he broke my favorite vase and confessed with tears. The couch where Hugh and I planned our future. But that future didn't look like this. What had I done wrong? Had I been a bad mother? I'd supported Brian in everything. I welcomed Dana, even tried to be her friend. And yet here I was, discarded. I let it happen. I let them treat me like a footnote, like my feelings didn't matter. And suddenly I saw it clearly. It wasn't just about Disneyland. I hadn't lived for myself in years. I'd existed in the margins of their lives, called in when needed, forgotten the rest of the time. Something inside me stirred, not anger but resolve. I stood up from the table, grabbed the old phone book and flipped through it. Most numbers were probably outdated, but I hoped one wasn't. Eunice Palmer. We'd been best friends since high school. We started teaching together, planned our weddings together. But life pulled us apart when her husband's job moved them away. After Hugh passed, we drifted even further. I stopped calling after Brian made a snide remark. Why would you still talk to Eunice? She's divorced. What kind of example is that? But I found her number. And I called. Just as I was about to hang up after the fourth ring, I heard a voice. Hello. Eunice. It's Martha Tandy. There was a beat of silence. Martha? Oh my God, it's you. It's been years. How are you? I hesitated. Honestly, not great. I need someone to talk to. You're the only one I trust. Her voice turned gentle. What's going on? Are you okay? Physically, yes, but not inside. I paused. Could you come over? Or I can come to you. Of course, honey, she said without hesitation. I'll be there this afternoon. As I hung up, something in me relaxed for the first time in weeks. Eunice had always been that way, steady, kind, no questions. I felt ashamed I'd let Brian's judgment pull me away from such a good friend. The rest of the morning I spent strangely energized. I tidied the already clean house, made lunch for two and pulled out old photo albums. I found one of Eunice and me at our college graduation, two young women with hopeful eyes and big dreams. I stared at my younger self. Where had that woman gone? At exactly 2 p.m. the doorbell rang. There she was, Eunice, silver strands now mixed in with her once fiery red hair, but still full of life. She hugged me tight without saying a word. And I broke down. Shoo, she whispered, stroking my back. Let's go inside. We sat at the kitchen table with hot tea and I told her everything. How after Hugh died I slowly faded into the background of Brian and Dana's life. Used when needed, forgotten when not. I told her about the trip, the lies, the pain of being left out by my own son. She listened without interrupting, just shaking her head now and then. When I finished, she laid her hand on mine. Martha, I've always known you were generous to a fault. But there's a difference between giving and disappearing. Her words hit hard. What they're doing to you, it's not okay. You don't deserve this. I looked down. But they're my family. My blood. He squeezed my hand. Blood doesn't excuse cruelty. Respect is earned. And from what you've told me, they've lost yours. He was right. I don't want them to take me out of pity, I said. I don't want a guilt invitation. Then what do you want? She asked. And I knew. I want to take my life back. I want to stop being a background character and start living for myself. Eunice beamed. There she is. That's the Martha I remember. I smiled through tears. Hugh and I used to dream about retiring by the ocean, getting a little house, watching the sunset every night. But I let that dream go after he died. Why not chase it now? She asked, eyes lighting up. You're free. No more obligations. You can move somewhere new. I looked around the house. But this has been my home for nearly 40 years. It's just a house, she said gently. Home is where you feel seen and loved. And it doesn't sound like you feel either here. I didn't answer, but the thought stayed with me. What if I did leave? Eunice went on. I live in Sunset Bay now. Little beach town just 3 hours away. Gorgeous views. Relaxed pace. There's a small house for sale right next to mine. It's cozy, overlooks the ocean. I think you'd love it. When she left, promising to call every day, I stayed seated in the living room, her words echoing in my head. Just that morning, moving had felt impossible. But now, it didn't feel so crazy. What if I really did it? What if I stopped being the convenient grandma, and finally showed Brian and Dana that I was a person with my own plans? The next morning I made a choice. I called the realtor Eunice had recommended and set up a meeting. Mr. Lambert, a calm, polite man in his 50s, toured my house and nodded with quiet approval. Mrs. Tandy, your home is in excellent shape, he said. And this area is in high demand. I believe we can get a very strong offer, especially given today's market. I braced myself for a modest number. Hugh and I had bought this house for practically nothing back then. But when Mr. Lambert told me the estimate, my jaw dropped. It was worth several times more than I imagined. Are you sure? I asked. Very sure, he smiled. And I already know buyers who've been waiting for a place like this. We can move quickly if you're ready. Something lit up inside me, freedom. Selling the house would mean I could afford that little beach cottage Eunice mentioned, with enough left to live comfortably. Let me think, I said. It's a big decision. Of course, he nodded. Call me anytime. After he left, I sat at my computer and pulled up photos of Sunset Bay. A peaceful little coastal town. Beaches, small shops, cafes, and a lively retirement scene. There were art classes, book clubs, beach yoga. I even found the cottage Eunice told me about. It was small but cheerful, with a porch that overlooked the ocean. I could picture myself sipping tea there, watching the sunset. Then I thought of Brian, Dana, the grandkids. Would they care? Try to stop me? Or just nod and carry on? And why did it matter? They didn't think of me when they left me off that trip. So why was I still putting them first? I picked up the phone and called Mr. Lambert. I'm ready to sell, I said firmly. The sooner the better. Wonderful, he said, clearly thrilled. I'll reach out to buyers today. As I hung up, I felt like a weight had slid off my shoulders. For once, I wasn't thinking about how to be useful. I was thinking about what I wanted. It was scary but freeing. I called Eunice next. I'm going for it, I told her. I'm buying the house if it's still available. I'll call the agent right now, she said, laughing. Martha, we're going to be neighbors again. Just like the old days. After we hung up, I felt more alive than I had in years. I walked through the house, mentally sorting what I'd take with me. Most of the furniture was too big. But I knew I'd keep Hugh's rocking chair, our photo albums, and my mom's old porcelain figurines. I didn't plan to tell Brian yet. He'd try to talk me out of it. Not because he cared, but because it would mean losing free childcare and handouts. Let it be my little secret, I thought, catching my reflection. It looked lighter. Younger. Like I'd peeled off years of silent resentment. 2 days later, Mr. Lambert called with news. 2 buyers were already lined up, both offering more than the original estimate. They're eager to see the house, he said. Can we show it tomorrow? Absolutely, I replied, feeling a rush of excitement. When I hung up, I looked around my house with fresh eyes. Strangers would walk through soon, imagining their future here. And instead of sadness, I felt hope. Later that day, Eunice texted me. Her agent in Sunset Bay could show me the cottage whenever I was ready. Everything was falling into place. I started packing the most precious things quietly: photos, letters, documents. I didn't want neighbors asking questions just yet. While sorting through an old album, I found a photo from our 30th anniversary. Hugh and I were surrounded by friends and family. Brian stood next to Dana, who was already pregnant with Noah. Everyone was smiling. I stared at Hugh's face and whispered, "Would you approve of this, love?" I could almost hear him. "Martha, you've always given your all. Maybe now it's time to give something to yourself." He was right. It was time to stop being a side character in someone else's life, and start being the main one in mine. The day Brian's family left for Disneyland, the phone rang while I was finishing my morning tea. I saw his name on the screen and tensed up. "Good morning, Brian," I said. "Mom's slight change of plans," he began. "We're leaving tonight instead of tomorrow. Dana wants a full night's rest before the park." "Okay," I said simply. He used to call just to chat. Now it felt like he only called when there was a logistical update. "And Mom," he added, "would you mind keeping an eye on the house while we're gone? Water the plants, bring in the mail." I almost laughed. Of course, they didn't want me on vacation with them, but they still wanted me to look after their things. "Sure," I said. I didn't mention that I'd soon be out of town myself. "I'll take care of everything." "Thanks, that's a big help. The keys are still in the flower pot." "Got it. Safe travels." "Thanks. Gotta run, so much to do before we go." And just like that, the call ended. No, "How are you?" No, "What's new?" Just a list of errands. I looked out the window. He lived only 20 minutes away, but we couldn't have felt farther apart. That evening, I watched from behind the curtains as they packed the car. Brian, Dana, the kids, and Dana's parents. No one glanced toward my house. No wave. Nothing. When the car pulled away, I felt relief. I finally had 7 quiet days to start my new life. The first thing I did was call Mr. Lambert. "How did the showing go?" His answer lit me up. "Mrs. Tandy, we already have an offer." Mr. Lambert called with news. The Brooks family wanted to buy my house at asking price, maybe even higher. Mr. Brooks had landed a hospital job and they needed to move fast. I could hardly believe it. "That's amazing," I breathed. "The market's hot, especially in your area," Mr. Lambert said. "If you're ready, we can start next week." I nodded, stunned by how quickly things were falling into place. "And about the cottage in Sunset Bay?" I asked. "I already spoke to the agent," he replied. "She's ready to show it whenever you are, even tomorrow if you like." I agreed without hesitation. Felt like everything was aligning, like I was finally walking the path I was meant to. The next morning, Mr. Lambert picked me up. As we drove out of Springfield, I felt years of tension begin to ease. The farther we got, the lighter I felt. When the ocean came into view, I couldn't hold back a smile. "It's beautiful," I said. "Thinking of retiring here myself," Mr. Lambert grinned. Sunset Bay was as charming as Eunice described. Colorful cottages, cozy cafes, art shops lining quiet streets. People actually stopped to chat. It was nothing like Springfield's frantic pace. Eunice met us outside a beachfront restaurant and hugged me like no time had passed. "Well?" she asked, gesturing toward the view. "It's magical," I said. After lunch, we met the realtor, Beverly, at the house. And the place was even better than the photos. 2 bedrooms, a sunny living room, a tidy kitchen, and a porch that looked straight out to sea. I stepped onto the deck and felt tears prick my eyes. This was the dream Hugh and I used to talk about. Eunice came up beside me. "Well?" she asked softly. "It's perfect," I whispered. "Then tell Beverly it's yours," she smiled. And I did. We drove back to Springfield in high spirits, going over the sale and purchase details. Mr. Lambert estimated everything would be done in a few weeks. Then he paused. "You might want to update your will too." My will hadn't changed since Hugh died. It still left everything, including the house, to Brian. But now things were different. "Do you know a good lawyer?" I asked. "He did, Mr. Preston." The next day I met with him. He was calm and attentive as I explained everything. When I finished, he simply asked, "What would you like to do?" I took a long breath. I want to invest most of the proceeds for income during my life. After I'm gone, half goes to my grandkids, but not until they turn 21. A quarter to my son. And the rest I want to donate to our local school's teacher fund. Mr. Preston nodded. And the Sunset Bay house? I want it left to the grandchildren too, but they can't sell it until they're 30. Until then, it's a vacation home for the family. That can be arranged, he said. I'll prepare everything. When I left his office, I felt light. I had protected the future of the people I loved most, even if their parents hadn't always done right by me. I spent the next few days clearing the house. Most of the old furniture I sold or donated. What hurt most was sorting through the memories, photos, letters, keepsakes from decades of life. I kept what mattered most: Hugh's chair, our photo albums, Jason's childhood drawings, and souvenirs from our travels. Everything fit into 2 small boxes. By the 4th day, I'd handled most of the chores. I remembered the favor Brian asked: check on the house while they were gone. So I stopped by, watered the plants, grabbed the mail. As I passed the living room, something caught my eye. A file folder left open on the table. Normally I wouldn't look, but my name was printed on the top sheet. I stepped closer. It was a financial document. A loan secured by my house, by my future inheritance. I sat down, trembling. The paperwork showed Brian had used my old will and an appraisal of my home to take out a loan, one worth nearly half the property's value. I flipped to the details. The purpose: business expansion. But I'd never heard of him starting a business. As far as I knew, he was still doing freelance engineering. I stared at the page in disbelief. He'd taken out money against something he didn't even own yet. Against me, essentially, as though I were gone already. I left quickly, heart pounding, and called Mr. Preston the moment I got home. I explained what I'd found. That's serious, he said, calm but firm. Legally, your son hasn't done anything illegal. Banks sometimes allow this based on an assumed inheritance. But ethically, it's troubling. What can I do? I asked. Nothing you're not already doing. You're not obligated to give him anything. If you sell, the bank will likely demand repayment or new collateral. So he could be in trouble, I murmured. Possibly, Mr. Preston said gently. But he chose this. You didn't agree to it. After we hung up, I sat alone in my quiet living room, stunned. Brian hadn't just taken me for granted. He had bet against my future without ever asking me. I felt torn. Part of me hated knowing Brian might be in financial trouble. But the bigger part couldn't ignore what his actions said. He didn't see me as a person anymore. Just future money. At that moment, my decision became final. I was selling the house, moving to Sunset Bay, and starting over. Whatever consequences came, Brian would handle them on his own. The week flew by. I signed all the final documents, called the movers, and arranged the bank transfer. Eunice called daily with support and updates. She was even setting up a room for me until my new home was ready. The night before Brian returned from Disneyland, I finished packing. The house felt hollow. Most of the furniture was gone, the shelves were bare, but the emptiness brought relief, not sadness. It meant freedom. That evening, I wrote Brian a letter. I kept it honest, not bitter. I told him how hurt I felt. How being left out, finding that loan document, was the final straw. I wasn't punishing him, I just wanted the rest of my life to feel like my own. I told him my door was open, but I wouldn't keep living like I didn't matter. I left the letter on the kitchen table. Early the next morning, Mr. Lambert picked me up. I walked through each room one last time, no tears, just peace. When we arrived in Sunset Bay, Eunice was waiting, arms waving like a teenager. Welcome home, she beamed. I hugged her tight. Me too, I whispered. And I meant it. Until the papers were finalized, I stayed with Eunice. We explored town, met neighbors, and watched sunsets from her porch. I felt more alive than I had in years. A week later, I got the keys to my new house. It was smaller than my old one but full of light. As I stood on the porch looking out at the ocean, I smiled. We made it, Hugh, I whispered. Just like you always wanted. That night, I fell asleep to the sound of waves, thinking of Brian. By now, he'd found my letter. What was he feeling? Shock? Guilt? Anger? I didn't know. And for once, I didn't care. I had chosen me, and that choice brought peace. Meanwhile, Brian returned from Disneyland exhausted. The trip had been long, the kids cranky, and everyone just wanted to get to bed. After carrying the kids in and unpacking, Dana told him to check the mail. He found the usual bills and then an envelope with his name handwritten. His mother's handwriting. He opened it casually. But as he read, his face changed. First confusion, then disbelief, and finally anger. "Dana," he shouted. "Come here." She rushed in. "What's going on?" "She sold the house," he snapped, waving the letter. "She left. She moved to the coast." Dana grabbed the letter and skimmed it. "Is this a joke?" "No. She found the loan documents," he muttered. "She's gone." "The loan." Dana's voice sharpened. "What loan, Brian?" He hesitated, then admitted, "I took out a loan against my inheritance. Against her house." "You did what?" Dana stared at him. "You mortgaged your mother's house without telling me?" "I thought it would be okay. I was going to use it for our business. I didn't think she'd ever." "She sold it, Brian. Do you know what this means? The bank will want that money back." He sat down, pale. He'd counted on the house being his after she passed. Now it was gone and the debt remained. "We have to go to her," he said finally. "Maybe we can fix this." "She mentioned Sunset Bay," Dana said. "I've never heard of it." "It's small. On the coast. My dad and I used to fish there." "And what are you going to do?" "Beg her to undo it." Dana crossed her arms. "What if she won't?" Brian didn't answer. He couldn't imagine his mother, so quiet, so obedient, actually following through on something like this. He barely slept that night, haunted by the words from her letter. "I found the loan papers. I'm choosing to live for myself. I won't be a burden anymore." He didn't know what was worse, the shock of losing the house or realizing he never really knew the woman he called Mom. How could she think she was a burden? "We visited every Sunday, didn't we? But we hadn't taken her to Disneyland, and maybe that was the final straw." The next morning, after dropping the kids at school and Dana at work, Brian drove back to his childhood neighborhood. When he pulled up to his mom's old house, his stomach dropped. A for sale sign stood in the front yard. So it was true. She'd really sold it. Before he could check for the key, the door opened. A man he didn't recognize stood on the porch. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Martha Tandy," Brian said, already knowing the answer. "She doesn't live here anymore," the man replied cheerfully. "My wife and I bought this place last week." "Lovely woman." Brian was stunned. "Last week? We were gone just 7 days." "It was a fast sale," the man said. "Our agent told us the minute it went on the market. We got lucky." "I'm her son," Brian said tightly. "I didn't know anything about this." The man looked awkward. "Sorry to hear that. But everything was handled legally. She said she wanted to move closer to the ocean. It seemed important to her." Brian didn't reply. He got in his car and sat for a moment, stunned. His mother, the quiet, dependable woman who never made waves, had sold the house in secret while they were away. He called her cell. It went straight to voicemail. "Mom, it's me. Please call me back. We need to talk. It's important." He remembered the name of the realtor from her letter and headed to Mr. Lambert's office. The older man greeted him politely but firmly. "I'm sorry, Mr. Tandy. I can't discuss client details without consent." "She's my mother." Brian snapped. "She's also an independent adult," Mr. Lambert said. "She was fully informed, met with a lawyer, and everything was above board." "What lawyer?" Brian asked. "I can't say. I suggest you contact your own attorney." Frustrated, Brian left. His mother hadn't acted impulsively. She had planned everything right down to the legal advice. His next stop was the bank. He explained the house was gone. The manager didn't flinch. "Your loan was secured by future inheritance," the manager said. "If that inheritance no longer exists, we'll need immediate repayment or new collateral." "I don't have that kind of money," Brian admitted. "Then we'll begin collection. That may include legal action or property seizure." "But I didn't know she'd sell the house." "That doesn't change the agreement," the manager replied. Brian left, shaken. He'd tied his family's future to a house that was never his, and now they could lose everything. How would he tell Dana? Or the kids? Back home, Dana was waiting. "Well," she asked. "Was it true?" Brian nodded. "Yes. The new owners have moved in. And Mom had a lawyer. Everything was legal." Dana shook her head. "She always seemed so safe." I never thought she'd do something like this. Neither did I, Brian said. But she did. And now we're in trouble. What did the bank say? Repay or lose the house, Brian muttered. Dana buried her face in her hands. How could you do this without telling me? I thought it'd be a surprise, he said weakly. The money was for our business. I wanted to build something for us. Now we might lose everything, Dana said coldly. They sat in silence. Have you tried reaching her? I left a voicemail. Do you know where in Sunset Bay she is? No. Just that she moved there. We have to find her, Dana said. Maybe we can reason with her before she spends the money. Maybe she can help with the loan. Brian nodded, though he wasn't hopeful. From her letter it was clear, she'd made up her mind. I'm going to Sunset Bay tomorrow, he said. I'm coming too, Dana replied. This affects all of us. They decided to leave the kids with Dana's parents and go together. But first they had to face another hard truth. They'd have to sell their own home to cover the loan. It was painful, especially for Dana. She'd spent years fixing up the house. But they saw no other choice. How do we explain this to the kids? She asked that night. We'll tell them the truth, Brian said. I made a mistake. And we'll live somewhere else for a while. But we're still a family. Dana nodded, but Brian could tell. Her anger hadn't faded. And he knew he'd have to earn back more than just money. He had risked our entire family's stability chasing a dream, without even asking his wife. The next day Brian called off work and Dana arranged childcare with her parents. They were set to leave for Sunset Bay early the next morning. That evening, after the kids had gone to bed, the phone rang. Brian answered. A woman's voice asked, "May I speak to Brian Tandy?" "This is Brian," he replied cautiously. "My name is Eunice Pry," she said. "I'm a friend of your mother's." He stiffened. The name rang a bell. His mom had mentioned someone named Eunice years ago. "What do you want?" he asked coldly. "I'm calling on her behalf. She got your message. She wants you to know she's doing well and is happy in her new life." "Why didn't she call herself?" he asked sharply. "Because she knows you'd try to change her mind or ask for money," Eunice replied. "And she's not open to either." Brian's anger flared. "This is a family matter. You shouldn't be involved." "I'm not," Eunice replied calmly. "I'm just passing on her message. She's changed her will. Most of her estate will go to your kids once they're grown. And she wants you to know she hasn't abandoned anyone. You and the children are welcome to visit anytime." Brian was stunned. "She changed her will? Why?" "You know why," Eunice said gently. "She found the loan documents. You borrowed against her house. A house that wasn't even yours. That hurt her deeply." Brian said nothing. He felt shame burn in his chest. "She doesn't hold a grudge," Eunice added. "She's just finally living for herself. And she's truly happy." After the call, Brian sat in silence until Dana joined him. "Who was it?" "Mom's friend," he replied. "She said Mom's okay. Happy. She also changed her will. Everything now goes to the kids." Dana shook her head. She thought this through. "I never imagined your mom had this kind of resolve." "Neither did I," Brian admitted. "I always saw her as quiet, predictable. But she's stronger than I thought." "You still want to go?" "I do," he said. "Not to convince her. I just want to understand." That night, lying in bed, Brian imagined his mother in that quiet coastal town. New house, new life. Was she different now? Happier? Maybe he never truly knew her. Maybe he just saw the version he wanted. The reliable, selfless woman who never asked for anything. 3 months flew by in a blur. My life in Sunset Bay blossomed with color, joy, and freedom I hadn't felt in years. Every morning I woke up excited, wondering what the day would bring. My little oceanfront home became my sanctuary. I filled it with light, kept it open and simple. I turned a spare room into a painting studio and took classes at the local college. My first attempts were clumsy, but my instructor said I had an eye for color. That morning everything changed. I was on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise turn the sea golden. I had a museum shift ahead, and Eunice had invited me to a small evening gathering. Then came the knock, far too early for visitors. I slipped on a robe and opened the door. It was Brian. My son. I hadn't seen him since I left. He looked exhausted with dark circles and more gray in his hair than I remembered. He stood there alone. "Mom," he said quietly. "I found you." I stepped aside wordlessly and let him in. Strangely, I didn't feel surprised or scared or even joyful. Deep down, I always knew he'd come. Whether for answers or money. "Coffee?" I offered. "No," he said curtly. Then softened. "Actually, yes. Black." I went to the kitchen to collect my thoughts, returned with 2 cups. He stood at the window staring at the waves. "Beautiful view," he said. "I get why you chose this place." "Your father and I always dreamed of a home by the sea," I said. "I remember," he nodded. "You talked about it when I was a kid." We sat in silence, sipping our coffee. "Why, Mom?" he finally asked, voice cracking. "Why did you just vanish?" "I left a letter," I reminded him. "And I called. You didn't answer." "I was angry," he said. "Selling the house, leaving, without talking to me. Why should I have?" I said quietly. "It was my house. My life." "But we're family," he burst out. "Big decisions should be shared." "Did you share your loan decision with me?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "You used my home as collateral without even asking." He looked away. "That was different. I was going to repay it. Still, you never asked. When I found those papers, it felt like I didn't matter. Like I was just property to you." "That's not true," he whispered. "I didn't want to trouble you. Or you didn't want me to say no." He said nothing. And in that silence, everything was clear. "How did you find me?" I asked, changing the subject. "I came after you left, but no one knew where you'd gone," he said. "I called, emailed. Nothing. I needed time," I admitted. "To settle in. To figure out who I was outside of everyone else." "And now?" he asked bitterly. "Is it worth it? Breaking the family?" "I didn't break anything," I said firmly. "You still have Kelly and the kids," I told him. "I'm just finally living for myself now." "It's not that easy," Jason replied. "The bank demanded repayment when you sold the house. We had to sell our car, take out another loan. The kids don't understand why Grandma vanished. Noah thinks you died. That hurt. Not the money, but the thought of the kids wondering if I was gone for good. I didn't disappear. I called, sent gifts, always invited you to visit. My door's still open." "How could we come?" he snapped. "We're barely staying afloat." I looked at him. "Is that why you're here? For money?" He looked down. "Not just that. I wanted to make sure you're okay." "I'm more than okay," I said. "For the first time in years, I feel alive." I walked over to the table and showed him photos. Me on the beach with Eunice, leading tours at the museum, painting class, laughing at a cafe. This is my life now. Not just waiting on rare visits. He flipped through the photos silently. I watched his face shift, first disbelief, then something softer. "You look happy," he said. "I am," I smiled. "Maybe for the first time since your dad passed." "But what about us?" he asked. "You're still my family. That doesn't mean I have to live only for you. I deserve my own joy too." He stood by the window, fists clenched. I knew he was struggling to accept I'd taken control of my life. "I'm not going back to Springfield," I told him. "And I can't give you money. Not because I don't care, because it wouldn't help either of us." "I don't understand," he said. "If I went back, nothing would change. I'd fall into the same old pattern, used when needed, forgotten when not. And if I gave you money, you'd just repeat the same mistake." "We didn't use you," he whispered. I sighed. "When's the last time you called just to talk? Not to ask for help, just to check in?" He had no answer. I touched his shoulder. "I don't blame you or Kelly. Life is busy. But I need one too, and I'm building it now. What do I tell the kids?" "Tell them the truth. That Grandma lives by the ocean now and she loves them very much. That they're always welcome here." "Can they really visit?" he asked, some hope in his voice. "Of course," I smiled. "There's a beach, the museum, all kinds of things for kids. I'd love to have them." He nodded and I felt the tension between us ease just a bit. "I have to head back tonight," he said. "Sure you don't want dinner?" He paused, tempted, but shook his head. "Kelly's waiting and I have an early meeting." At the door he hugged me, really hugged me. "I'm sorry, Mom. For everything. I forgave you a long time ago," I said gently. "Now it's your turn to forgive yourself." He walked to his car and drove away without looking back. I stood there for a long while, feeling both sorrow and peace. He was still my son. But I didn't cave. I didn't give up the life I'd finally claimed. The rest of the day went by in a blur. I gave a tour at the museum, had lunch with coworkers, then headed to painting class. But my mind was still with Jason, thinking about how much had changed. Later, while getting ready for Eunice's party, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I looked younger. Not in my face, there were still wrinkles and gray hair, but in something deeper. I looked strong. Calm. Like a woman who finally knew her own worth. "Martha, you coming?" Eunice called. "I'm on my way," I smiled. Her house, just a couple streets from mine, was full of music and laughter. She opened the door and hugged me. We were starting to worry. "Sorry I'm late," I said. "It was a long day." "Jason came, didn't he?" I nodded. "It went better than I expected. He was upset, but by the end, I think he understood." "That's a win," Eunice grinned. "Now forget the past and enjoy the night." The living room was full. Neighbors who'd become my friends. Ben, who taught me to fish, Al from painting class, Mark from the museum, sweet Patricia and Thomas from across the street. All ages, all walks of life, and they'd welcomed me as one of their own. "Martha." Al raised her glass. "We were just talking about your painting. Mark says you're improving fast." "Don't exaggerate," I laughed. "A very promising beginner," Mark said. "We'd love to feature some of your work at the museum. Nothing big, just a corner for local artists." My heart warmed at the thought. That'd be wonderful. The night flew by, stories, dancing, laughter. Eunice played music from our youth and we did old-school dances that had everyone clapping. No one watched the clock. No one wanted to leave. Past midnight, Eunice walked me out. The stars sparkled above and we could hear the ocean even from here. "You okay?" she asked. "More than okay," I said. "I was just thinking. I found something here I never had in Springfield." "What's that?" "Myself," I said. "Not just Jason's mom, not the kid's grandma, just Martha. A woman with her own dreams. And the right to chase them." Eunice hugged me. "You deserve this." I walked home under that starry sky, full of gratitude, for this day, these people, this new beginning. Yes, Jason's visit stirred up emotions. But it didn't shake me. Families are complicated. They're not always built on love. Sometimes they're shaped by guilt, habit, or expectation. And sometimes, to protect your own soul, you have to step away. Not to abandon them, but to finally choose yourself. That night, before bed, I stepped out onto the terrace and looked out at the ocean. Tomorrow would be a new day. And I was ready for it, on my terms.